So welcome, everyone. My name is Martin Youssef, and I'm the Associate Vice President of the University Relations Team at UBC Okanagan. Delighted that you could be joining us today. I do want to begin by respectfully acknowledging the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples on whose traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory UBC Okanagan is located. I also do want to acknowledge, given that this is a Zoom call, that many of you are joining us from different places, near and far, and particularly in light of the recent events, acknowledging the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. Before I say a little about this morning's program and introduce Dr. Cormack, you might be wondering why we're on Zoom and not in person, as we've traditionally done this, especially given the fact that we have an improved position with respect to the wildfire situation and that this week's return to normal campus operations at UBCO. So as you of course know, our campus has been downgraded to an evacuation alert, and it remains at that point for now. And while it might feel for many of us that we've returned to semi-normal, many of our colleagues are still severely affected by this wildfire. And so we chose to hold today's town hall via Zoom so that we can accommodate as many people as possible. We're also, as you might have noted, we're recording this session, and we'll be sure to post it online afterwards to ensure that as many of our colleagues who couldn't be with us today, that they're able to watch it afterwards. As you've likely heard by now, the Staff Awards of Excellence is going to be announced at a later date, and also the Staff and Faculty Barbecue is being postponed. We are looking at expanding that into a campus-wide event, so stay tuned for more information from us on that. Today, we're going to hear from our Principal and Deputy-Vice Chancellor, Dr. Lesley Cormack, and then we're going to open it up to questions from you using both the Q&A tool, but also hearing from you directly, if you wish, using the raise hand function, both of which are at the bottom of your screen. And Nathan Skolsky is going to navigate us through these questions after Lesley's remarks. We will answer as many questions as possible. I know time is always a bit of a crunch for us. We're going to try to answer them here, and the ones that we can't get to, we're going to do our best to answer all of them in a future exchange newsletter. So please do hold your questions if I can ask you to do that, as I suspect many of them are going to be answered by Lesley's remarks, and then we'll make sure we open it up for questions after that. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lesley Cormack. Welcome, Lesley.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning to everyone. I'm really glad to be with you here today, even though I would have preferred this to be in person, but I think that it does make sense that we're doing it as a Zoom meeting today. And I do have to say that if we had to postpone the staff barbecue, which was so wonderful last year, I'm very glad it's raining. So hopefully we will all be in a better place in the next few weeks. The last couple of weeks have been really hard on our campus community and, of course, our region. And so I am happy that we're able to gather in as a campus community this morning, albeit virtually. It feels like so long ago since we all gathered for Opera Under the Stars that was here at the beginning of August, a beautiful time of 1,200 people on campus, glorious weather. It was amazing. And it really was just a few weeks ago. It's kind of hard to imagine. With everything that's taken place, it's important, I think, for us to recognize the enormous trauma that our community has been through with the recent wildfire event, and to be aware of the effect of that trauma. We've just lived through a really critical situation in the Central Okanagan, and one that's most critical that we've seen in the last several decades. It's been, I think, an incredibly difficult time for everyone, and I encourage us all to pause now and then and reflect on how we're doing 2 weeks on and continue to do so going forward. I know when I was evacuated a week ago Thursday, it took me really several days before it even sunk in that I could lose my house. And those are things that come back to you over and over again. So I know that many of you are in situations like I am. Many of you are in situations where you have lost property and we don't know what's coming next. So please process this as you can. It's going to take us some time, I think, to process and feel the effects. And so now more than ever, it's so important that we are kind to one another, that we practice empathy in all our interactions and generosity, that we need to support each other and recognize that we have all come through something, we are all going through something, and we will get through this, but we need to do it together. I want to express my heartfelt condolences and compassion for everyone who has been affected, including and maybe especially those who have lost their homes. If anyone is struggling, please remember that there are a variety of supports available to faculty, staff, and your families through the Employee and Family Assistance Program. And I really do encourage you to access the services that are available to you, or reach out to trusted colleagues to talk. Support for students is also available through UBCO Health and Wellness, including various in-person, virtual, and 24/7 supports. Of course, we know the situation is ongoing for many, including colleagues on the west side of Okanagan Lake, where evacuation alerts continue to shift. With that in mind, we've made commitments to work closely with those impacted by the wildfires to ensure that they have the flexibility they require to start the academic year successfully. Both instructors and supervisors have been encouraged to consider what concessions or supports are needed based on the individual circumstances of affected students and employees. What I do know for certain is we will get through this together, and we'll do it by standing by one another in this time of need. On that note, I really want to express my appreciation for the significant staff support we received from UBC in Vancouver in recent days, as well as the many offers of support that came in from our sister post-secondary institutions across BC and beyond. We are in people's thoughts, and they really did reach out and offer substantial support to us. And I think that's really important. So I thank them all for that. There are countless examples from the recent days of people going above and beyond for their colleagues, for our students, and for the university community. Although we've made the decision to postpone the Staff Awards of Excellence, I do want to give a few shout outs to some staff members who have gone above and beyond the call of duty over the last few weeks. First, I just have to thank everyone who worked together to ensure the campus was evacuated and shut down in a safe and orderly fashion, including our campus security team, IT, staff from conferences, student residences, and other areas. And I have to see as the leaders of that Friday day, Shelley K. Fish and Shannon Dunn, who really worked to make sure everyone was safe, everyone was taken care of, and we closed the campus in record time. It was astonishing. And of course, many of the same people in those teams worked hard to quickly turn things around and ensure the campus was prepared to serve as a temporary home and staging area for firefighters. This was hugely important. Thanks to these efforts, UBCO played a crucially important role in the emergency response effort by providing high-quality accommodations to more than 500 firefighters from across British Columbia and beyond, as well as staging dozens of fire trucks and even a helicopter. I'd like to just pause here to try and give people a sense of what it was like on campus, because I think many of the rest of us were on evacuation order and were not on campus. So there are some slides here that can give you some indication of what H lot looked like. At about 10 p.m. each day, a fleet of firefighters would pull into campus at the end of their shifts. The display of emergency vehicles in H lot and F lot, proudly displaying the names of communities from across BC, was an impressive show of force and a real reminder of how we come together in times of need. Everyone was very appreciative of UBCO, and likewise, we were enormously grateful for all the first responders, including the support that poured in from all over the province. We have a short video clip to show you from our local photographer, our friend Daryl Hull, who got footage of some of the crew while on campus.
And Gibson. Thank you guys so much and good luck today.
We're from Nelson area.
Kootenai strong. Guys, amazing. Good luck today. And thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
We're all from the Sunshine Coast. She and I are from Gibson, so we've got Roberts Creek and Half Moon Bay representing.
Guys, thank you today, or thank you for everything, and good luck today.
Wow. Stirs up a lot of emotions, I think, to see the people behind the firefighting equipment who stepped up for us. These are our friends, our neighbors from all over British Columbia, and they did an astonishing job. You know, when I moved back into my house in Wilden, I was astonished that the neighborhood had not gone up in flames. There are burns all over the neighborhood. I can see them from my deck. I can see them when I walk through the neighborhood, and they saved every house in that neighborhood. It's just, it's kind of unbelievable. And the work that those people have done in West Kelowna, in Kelowna, in Lake Country has been so life-changing. The firefighters did an incredible job of protecting so many homes, and at great personal danger. We owe them a great deal. Again, thanks to everyone who helped make it possible for UBCO to support the crews of the first responders. It really did make a big difference in the firefight and a huge impression in the community about how UBCO steps up. Now the firefighters are gone because now we need to swing to pivot to welcome our students. And so we needed to clean out the residences to get ready for our students who are coming. And in fact, because we had to cancel Jumpstart, we had to cancel some of the activities of this last week, we are actually going to have more students coming to campus this weekend than we've ever had before. We are expecting approximately 40% more students to move in this Sunday than usual. And so this is my first shout out for volunteers. If there's anyone on this call who feels that they could help welcome students in move-in day this weekend, it would be amazing. It's so important to our students and their parents to see how welcoming UBCO is. And I think it's especially important right now that since the fire started, we've had calls from students, calls from parents. Are we starting? What is happening? Is it safe? And we really want to welcome them to the campus and let them know that this is a caring community. And yes, it is safe. And yes, we are starting on the 5th of September, and we will proceed as usual. So now back to the shout outs. Everyone in the student portfolio has been working hard around the clock, fielding student questions from students, supporting students impacted by evacuations. We did have students who went down and slept in Prospera Place because they needed to be evacuated from the residence, processing requests for emergency funding, pivoting our welcoming events. So despite this, despite the fact that Dale and many members of his team were evacuated themselves. Thank you all. A big thank you to everyone in university relations who have been working again around the clock to keep our campus community informed as the wildfire situation evolved. And I especially do want to shout out Nathan Skolsky, who, as he said, had the whole of COVID happen in a week. So the kind of moving target for communications is just incredible. Similarly, I know that the HR team was stretched very thin by the amount of support that was needed during this period. A huge thank you to Alex and the whole HR team. I also want to thank all the staff from campus operations and risk management who have been here literally 24/7 throughout the wildfire event to ensure that the campus was protected during the height of the emergency, to ensure that researchers were able to access campus during the height of the emergency to preserve things like critical cell cultures and other precious research samples, and that campus could be quickly turned around post-emergency and at full operational capacity for the start of term. I also really want to highlight and recognize that many of those folks are the very same people who were on campus during the initial onset of COVID-19, amidst the peak of that uncertainty, and when the rest of us were staying away. A huge thank you to the entire Quorum team and all the folks on the ground who stepped up once again. Finally, I want to recognize all the hard work of our academic staff and of course the faculty as you prepare for the start of a new academic year. To our outstanding faculty members, I know it's not easy to write syllabi, plan lectures, or even do deep thinking in the midst of an emergency situation. Thank you for all your efforts, for your flexibility. If your exams had to be rescheduled, we did have exams on the day of the evacuation. And above all, for being there for our students when they arrive in your classrooms next week, and as you've undoubtedly been fielding questions from them in the weeks before. Now, I recognize I've taken a risk in embarking on a list of thank yous, because when you do that, it is inevitable that individuals or groups who deserve recognition will not be highlighted, whether due to time constraints or that somehow I've just had a brain meltdown and forgotten. I know that this event has been hard on each and every one of us, and everyone worked together, pulling in long hours to get us through this. I'm always proud of being principal of UBCO, but I'm especially proud at a moment of a crisis like this, where everyone pulled together, everyone did what needed to be done, often not being concerned about their own personal issues, but just moving us through. And so I really want everyone to know that you are seen, that your supervisors and colleagues are grateful, and that you should be very proud of your contribution. We did very well. So thank you all. So now I want to turn to looking ahead, because we managed that crisis, but now it's term time. So what are we doing? It feels sometimes like it's hard to go beyond the recent days, but it's important to remember, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we've got students coming, because we have our programs and our research that are so important, not only to us and our community, but to the wider world. So we look forward to a lot of things in this coming year. And most importantly, the students are back. With the return of classes and campus full of life, September's always been my favorite time of year. I have to say it's been my favorite time of year since I was 6 years old. I'm one of those people who wants to go and get stationery so that the year can begin. Let's be mindful that some students were evacuated, others had their travel impacted, and many are still feeling uneasy. So we need to do everything we can to make our students feel welcome when they arrive and give them that great welcome and make sure that the campus works really well. We have, of course, had our Bachelor in Silken Language Fluency graduates last year, and now we have new Indigenous language programs. So we have 2 new Interior Salish Language Fluency degrees at UBCO, which continues our important collaborative efforts to ensure the precious original languages and cultures of British Columbia are restored to their thriving pre-colonial status. It matters that we are doing this work. I also want to let you know that we will have an upcoming announcement of new tech seats coming soon. UBC has been working with the provincial government for some time now on new funding for expansions in tech-related programs, building on the previous expansion of tech programs and the recent growth of our health programs at UBCO. Stay tuned for an announcement shortly, which will include new and expanded tech-related programming. I can't offer the details prior to the announcement. The government would be very upset at me somehow scooping their story, but I am delighted that this expansion will involve multiple faculties and programs at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. I'd also like to announce that we have a new Canada Research Chair. Congratulations to UBCO's newest Canada Research Chair, Dr. Sarah Purcell, now officially a Tier 2 CRC in nutrition and metabolism in chronic disease. The announcement earlier this week of Dr. Purcell's award included news of more than $6 million in new grants for researchers across 7 UBCO faculties and schools. So that is excellent news across the board. Homecoming is back on Friday, September 22nd and Saturday, September 23rd. And having now surpassed more than 25,000 UBCO alumni, we have a lot to celebrate. After a difficult summer, it's more important than ever to connect with our alumni community, but also as a campus community. I'm excited to learn that registration numbers are strong, and I'm looking forward to seeing many of you at some of the events. A big thank you to athletics and all the participating faculties for collaborating with the DAE on the event. Homecoming volunteers are also needed, so here's my second shout out for volunteers. So please watch for details on how to sign up in the Engage newsletter. The Forward campaign for UBC was launched last year to focus our donor community on healthy lives, healthy communities, and solutions for the planet. I am delighted to report that the campaign has passed the halfway marks for both the UBCO goal of $125 million and UBC's overall goal of raising $3 billion. This is very exciting news. We're very proud to have received a generous gift to establish a dedicated Okanagan Student Affordability Fund, which was one of the goals of the campaign. We're also very pleased to have raised more than $135,000 this month, in fact, in the last week and a half, for the Student Emergency Fund, money which is being directed to students needing support in light of the wildfire situation. I want to thank all of our incredible supporters, and kudos to the whole team at DAE for raising these funds to support students in just a matter of days. It was really quite heartwarming and amazing to see how fast people were willing and really wanted to help our students through this difficult time. We also have coming up the second UBC Okanagan Debates event. Watch for updates on the next debates event, which will be held in late October at the Kelowna Community Theatre on the importance of free speech. I think that's going to be a very interesting debate and very timely, I think, for what's been going on in the world. We also have a new president. We're welcoming UBC's new president, Dr. Bacon, Dr. Benoit Antoine Bacon. I certainly want to make sure that you know he is starting the 1st of November. I had the opportunity to meet Benoit over the summer, and I'm really looking forward to having him, being able to introduce him to the whole community here in the Okanagan. And he is very interested in being here and knowing what our campus is like. I know that he's very eager to meet with as many of you as possible. He's very committed to the community, the internal community especially, and wants to meet students, faculty, and staff as soon as possible. I also do want to let you know that he reached out to me during the wildfire evacuation to express his sympathy and concern, and I really think that speaks to his character, that even before he's here, he's thinking about the university and the campus that he is going to preside over. And of course, with a new president, we will be saying goodbye to our interim president. And so this is a chance. There will be a few other chances, but I really want to thank Dr. Deborah Buzzard for stepping in at such a crucial time, that she has done a huge amount of work as interim president and vice chancellor. And I have really appreciated working with her. Of course, it has been wonderful having a president who knows UBCO as well as Dr. Buzzard does, but she has also really looked at the whole of UBC and has worked to make it a better place. So thank you to Deborah for her support, her friendship, and her stewardship of this amazing ship, which is UBC. So the events of August 2023 are undoubtedly going to leave a scar on our region. They'll leave a physical scar. As I say, every time I walk around my neighborhood, I see all the blackened trees in space. And if we look across the lake, we see even more. And this has obviously been a difficult way to kick off the academic year for students, faculty, and staff alike. But I go back to what I said before, that I'm never prouder of UBCO than I am at these moments of crisis, when everyone pulls together and works so hard to make sure that we can continue in the right way. We've seen the community's strength and character tested. We've seen that before, and when we see it now, and I have every confidence that we're going to overcome adversity once again and continue on our proud path of excellence in teaching, in learning, in research, as we approach our 20th anniversary to take place in under 2 years. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions. To help moderate the Q&A, I'd like to thank Nathan Skolsky to please join me on the screen.
Hi there. Thanks, Lesley, and welcome everybody. This is one of the most anticipated portions of the town hall. Is it's your opportunity to ask questions, not just of Lesley, but also of the rest of the leadership team who are standing by, waiting to take some of those questions as well. So just as a reminder, if you look at the bottom of your screens, there's a couple different ways that you can ask a question. One is to use the Q&A function. So you just press that Q&A button, and you can ask your question in writing, and everyone else can vote on their favorite questions by giving it a like, and the most popular ones will float to the top, and we'll try and do our best to answer those in order. The other way of asking questions, if you're feeling up to it and you want to ask your question orally in front of everyone else, you're welcome to do that too. You can click on the raise hand button at the bottom, and I can actually bring you into the conversation, and you can ask your question using your voice, and we'll flop back between the two as we go. So now's the time to throw your questions into the Q&A box. As you're doing that, I'll ask the rest of the panel to please turn on their videos, on their cameras, I should say, so that everyone in the audience can remember who they're asking their questions of. And just as a reminder, who we have on the screen with us is obviously Lesley. We have Rehan Siddiq, we have Adrian Skinner, Alex Bain, Shannon Dunn, Dale Mullings, Rob Einerson, and Shelley K. Fish. So those are the people that you have to ask your questions to. Please do put your questions into the Q&A box. As much as I love raking my collective bosses over the coals with my own questions, it's much easier if you ask them for me. So let's get started, because I see a couple showing up in the Q&A box already. So the first one is from Tamara. And she's asking, there are so many resources and directions available. Where's the best place for us to direct students who require support and having been immediately impacted by the wildfires? So this is, maybe I'll throw this one to Dale, if you don't mind. And Dale can talk about the various services and offerings that we have for students specifically.
Thanks so much, Nathan. So because we're trying to reach all students and specific populations of students at the same time, and by that I mean we want to get a message out to all students that the campus is open, campus will start in person on the 5th, and that we want people to arrive. We are putting out general messaging and continuing to update the FAQ. So we're going to want to always be directing students to the FAQ. At the same time, populations of students, such as our resident students, international students, some of our Indigenous student populations are receiving direct student communications also from offices. And so those pieces of information are also being updated on the FAQ, so that any general student that may not have checked their email can look to that. There may be general questions around what services are operational, are those in person or virtual? And so I'll share 2 links here in the chat. One would be for the FAQ, and then one just generally around student support resources and where students can be directed for one-on-one virtual or in-person supports within student services as well.
Thanks, Dale. So the FAQ is that does include a lot of answers for students. It also includes answers for faculty and staff. So if you just go to our main webpage, ok.ubc.ca, the FAQ is sitting right at the top of that page. So student questions are answered there, as well as questions for everyone else. And I also need to correct an error I made earlier. I introduced everyone except my boss, Martin Youssef. So he's also joining us in the panel. So feel free to throw some questions his way as well. Okay, the next question in the Q&A is from Catherine, and she's asking for an update on the conditional go decision for the Workday student launch. So Lesley, I think it's probably best to throw this one your way. Do you have an update on Workday students?
Absolutely. So Nathan, I hope that wasn't a career limiting move to not mention Martin's name. So we're right in the thick of the taking off the conditions on the go decision. Yesterday was the day that things were supposed to have been done. So I, as an executive lead sponsor, was in meetings yesterday, and today we're going to executive, and then on to talking to the president and the head of audit committee and various other things. Generally, it's looking very good that most of the conditions have been passed. Most of the testing has been done. They have a great new plan. I just heard about yesterday afternoon for institutional readiness preparation, which is good. So that's important. There's just a couple of niggling things that we need to sort out, and so there's a couple of things left, but we will be able to communicate that, I think, by the end of the week. That's certainly my hope. It's just when it gets bound up in the kind of bureaucracy of presidents and boards, it could take till next week, but it's pretty close to that. And I have to say that the IRP team has just been working flat out all of August to do all of the end-to-end testing, and it's all continued to come back at 98% bug-free, and so it's going very well, I would say.
Great, thank you. So the next question in that Q&A box is from Kasoon, and he's asking, COVID and other global conditions had a negative impact on international student numbers at UBCO, and I think we saw a lot of coverage internationally about what was happening here in the Okanagan. So it was hard to miss that what we saw here on the ground. So did it impact our financial standing in general? How healthy is our UBCO finances compared to pre-COVID times? I think maybe Rob Einerson is the best person to direct this one to. Rob, do you have? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, certainly can. Thanks, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be able to meet with everyone and see such a good turnout today. So thanks for participating. So it's a good question, and we're asked this a few times. COVID had, in some ways, very strange responses in a couple of the years of COVID, where we really anticipated there being a step back with just the uncertainty and what is the program going to look like. We actually saw numbers exceeding some of our targets for a couple of years, and we have been seeing some correction. And I would say that that's something that has been experienced kind of certainly across Canada, if not around the world. The competition for international students is growing. The dynamics is changing. Politics affects that, and so on and so forth. So there's probably a number of factors that are in it. We've been monitoring this for the last 2 years. Last year, as many on the Zoom will know, we saw the first time that we didn't achieve our targets. That didn't mean that we had less students, but it certainly meant that we had less students than we were planning for. And again, this year, it looks like that will be the case again. So for last year, we thought it might have been a one-year thing as opposed to a trend, but we are realizing now that this may be a bit of a new reality, and that means calibrating, kind of how we make our expenditures, how we expect international students to come, and whether they stay. So we've been working very closely with the Provost Office and the Strategic Enrollment Management Group to monitor this, and so as a result, there is a financial impact. And what we will be sharing with our Board of Governors and our executive in the community is what does that mean for the current year, as well as what does it mean for future years. And it will mean a financial adjustment for us. I wouldn't attribute it specifically to COVID. I wouldn't even attribute it specifically maybe to what we might see with some students who don't attend here just because of the uncertainty of the fires that have been happening over the last few weeks. But it is something that we need to address in the short term as well as the long term. I know that Dale Mullings, Rehan Sadiq, and some of the strategic enrollment group are looking at how we recruit students who really want to come to the Okanagan, stay in the Okanagan. And so we are actively looking at recruitment strategies that would try and make sure that the kinds of students who really want to come and study and stay here will do that. But that's more of an intermediate to long term. So part of this may be some belt tightening. I'm not going to lie. I've been at a couple of universities where the trend has gone up and down a little bit more frequently than it has here at UBC or UBCO. But that is something that we're going to have to face. It could impact, our ability to move some of our really strategic, important strategic plans forward. But it is something that I can guarantee you is an active discussion on a daily basis, and we'll be seeking input from a lot of our units on how best to do that.
Thanks, Rob. Next question from Tamara, who is a rock star in the questions. I might add, there's a few from her. So thank you for that, Tamara. So the past academic year, we had challenges with classrooms not having enough power outlets to accommodate students' use of technologies. That's during classes, but also during exams. Do we have any improvements on that front, or are there plans to make improvement on that front? I think Rob's probably best directed at you again.
Yeah, I can certainly flag that for our campus operations team. I can tell you at this point in time, we're not making it. We don't have any direct plans to be able to make those improvements. Power is a funny thing. We can do a lot of things with Wi-Fi. We can do a lot of things with fiber optic that are a lot easier. Power is a thorny one because it does still require, a direct connection to equipment that's in there, and it can be a very expensive thing to change, especially in a classroom setting. In some places we can run power that kind of comes down from the roof, but it's very obstructionist if you have that in a classroom. So Tamara, I can certainly note it, and I know that you're active on Senate and those kinds of things, so maybe we can bring back an answer to that forum as well. But at this point in time, we don't have any active plans to be able to do that, but certainly can take it under consideration.
Nathan, can I add something here?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I just want to add that we have flagged this thing for our ICI building and then downtown campus. This is the priority. And as Rob just mentioned, for existing infrastructure is sometimes much more costlier. So we are aware of this, and it's a top priority definitely for the new buildings.
Perfect, thank you. So again, question goes to Tamara, and this is she's asking about the progress or an update on the new ICI building, which has a new name as well, Halseach Patton Wheaton. I've been practicing, but I probably got that a bit wrong. Sorry, Rob, to keep putting you on the spot, and maybe Lesley, you might want to jump in on that one too.
I can take it initially and then maybe pass it over for some of the research things. I'll queue it up for Rahan because I know that there's a process for also the research activities going into the building. The building does continue to progress on schedule. As you know, we do have two buildings that are in progress. There's the one for our downtown project as well as the one on campus. The one on campus was able to kind of continue fairly well through the latest disruption. It was evacuated, but that really didn't materially change the progress. We are still on schedule where we're targeting, the fall of 2025 for that particular building. We haven't encountered anything weird. Sometimes when you start to dig in the ground, you start to find situations that may cause you a bit of concern with being able to meet our targets and being able to do things on time, on budget. But progress kind of continues well on that. You'll notice that there's been some activity on the roadways there. Part of this is that when we go into the ground, if there's things that we need to do and might want to do in the near term, it's also important to do those. So we are also making some adjustments and improvements that will allow us to develop the southern part of campus there, but that roadway should be coming back into service sometime in the fall. So at this point in time, everything is green light and everything is go. Things have all been tendered, all the contracts that are out there, and now we just cross our fingers and hope for a good 18 months of building progress, good weather, supply chain and things like that. But we're on track and on schedule for that. But I know that there's also a process for research activities in there. Then I'll pass that to Rahan.
Thanks, Rob. So we started the process earlier this year, and for occupancy of ICI. So we have principles on indigeneity, interdisciplinarity, and innovation for occupancy of ICI building, and we have those expression of interest. We went through the process, which was a very rigorous process. We have seen a lot of interest from the whole community. And in the fall, we will be shortlisting, and our idea is to create some neighborhoods where we can see a real value for our campus. And this process will be communicated constantly to the community in next coming weeks.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next question is from Anonymous. So this is around tuition for Okanagan Nation members who are looking to register for the Indigenous language degree programs. So I'll maybe direct that one to Lesley first. And then I see that Adrienne Vidan is also in the audience. So if she's willing to speak to that, we'll bring her in as well.
Yeah, although I think it's more a UBC question than the community question. Thank you for that. I know that this is an active conversation in a number of universities across the country. We have not at UBC yet had that conversation and recognize that it would not be a UBCO decision. It would be a full UBC decision and would probably not be about specific programs. And so it's kind of a complicated discussion. I think it is something we will need to look at given what has been being discussed across the country. In the meantime, what we've really doubled down on is trying to have great support for the students in that program. That DAE has done a wonderful job of finding funding for those students, and we have significant support for the students in the language programs. Well, we're always looking for more, but I feel really proud of what we've done to support the students in that program. Adrienne, do you want to say anything more, or are you good? Sorry, which Adrienne? Adrienne Vidan.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. It's a wonderful question, and as Lesley had shared, a question that would happen across UBC, but also really importantly with our community partners.
Good point.
Great, thank you. So the next question, also an anonymous one, is with the limit of space and troubles of physically getting to campus for some, would there be any focus on getting undergraduate or graduate courses offered online? And maybe I'll expand that a little bit around maybe accommodations writ large, not just about going online. So Rayhan, are you able to speak to that?
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, so it's as we all know that on our campus, we have very limited space. I believe it's around 54 classrooms, and this has been a challenge. And we have a significant growth of number of programs added every year, and it put a lot of pressure on the system. And we learned something during COVID times about delivering online courses, but that is not our motivation, because we have more courses to offer or more students to serve, so that we go online. These decisions are based on the needs of the faculties, and those decisions are made by the deans. So the compromise is there that if we try to have all the courses being taught in person, our day might look much longer for the student. It might not be very convenient. That is one challenge we face all the time. And there are some issues. We are a new campus. We have lots of young faculty. We don't want to make just for availability of those, to delivery of those programs late in the day, that might be very difficult on a personal level as well. So we'd have to draw a balance somewhere. So this has always been a option there, but and from pedagogical point of view, sometimes it's much better to put online. But these decisions are made by the deans, and the recommendations are made by the deans, not as a provost office making those decisions. So this always be a compromise here. But I also like to add one thing, that as downtown campus and ICI building come in play in the near future, what is the impact on our campus? Definitely it's adding few classrooms, and also we are also looking at it. How the backfill going to look like? Is there any possibility of classrooms? All these things are on the table, because that's a priority, so that we can add more classroom on the campus. So it's not just having an online just because we don't have enough classrooms, because it is pedagogically important or it is good way of delivery, then we go in this direction. So we need to have a multifaceted solution for this complex problem.
Thanks, Rayhan. So the next question is around perceptions of UBCO. So students are sharing that UBCO is considered the second choice campus and inferior to Vancouver. Of course, we all know that that's not true. What is being done at the leadership level to identify and address the factors contributing to this perception? I think this is a good one actually to throw to Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. That is something that we often think about, and I'm gonna quote Dale Mullings on this one. But of course, there are certain things that we just simply cannot compete with when it comes to UBC Vancouver. We cannot compete on the breadth of experience that's offered for students at UBC Vancouver, but we can definitely compete on the depth. And so we try as much as possible to be able to highlight all of the positive experiences and the depth of experiences that students can get here. We do monitor, as you know, all of the social channels. And so we're aware that this is a narrative. And we know that we have the support of our Vancouver colleagues in order to be able to overturn that false narrative. And so that does take a lot of work, and it is going to take a lot of time in order for us to be able to do that, because it is a bit of a cultural shift. We are conscious of that, and I know that all of our colleagues it is something that we discuss quite often in terms of what can we do to sort of highlight. And this is really where we emphasize our campus positioning. And our campus positioning is really, what is our unique offering? So it isn't that we're constantly trying to compare the experience with Vancouver, but it is something that we want to be able to say, here's what makes us unique. Here is what you can get here at UBC Okanagan. That's an entirely different experience. And that is, as you may have seen in the past year, what we presented as our all-in campaign. And we'd be happy to provide you more links with that on our chat, to put that into the chat box so you could see. But I'll leave it at that, unless any of my other colleagues want to address it.
Maybe I'll throw something to Dale, if that's okay, because I think Dale, your team is at the vanguard of offering like really unique services to international students that make our campus, especially attractive. Can you speak a little bit to that, maybe?
Yeah, let me jump in here, and then I'll pass it to Rohan, because you're obviously having quite a number of conversations about this as a leadership team. But I do want to remind folks, when it comes to first choice applicants, we don't have a retention issue. Over 90% of our students are retained, similar to Vancouver, for our first choice applicants. But when it does come to our second and third choice applicants, it does drop to 70% retention and around 65% retention. And so really focusing on making UBCO a first choice destination is really critical for the retention of students here. So I want to thank our folks in the au pair team. They're doing incredible work to help us with data. And one of those pieces of data along the way here is exit surveys with students that leave UBCO or choose not to come to UBCO, which is helping inform some of the decision-making moving forward. I want to thank our colleagues across the faculties that are contributing to additional advising. We have significantly increased the academic advising complement in our areas. For one example, we now have 3 faculty of arts and social science advisors that are helping to support our students early and often, particularly those that are trying to navigate what are the experiences here that are unique and help them stay, but also those that are finding themselves academically in trouble early. So we're trying to have early intervention and engagement with that group. For increasing the total number of first choice international students, we've worked really closely with ISI in a collaboration and a new initiative between our Global Engagement Office and our Career Development team. And we've actually just hired a whole new cohort because our students at UBCO are 16% higher than the national average in terms of their interest in staying in Canada post-graduation. And so we've implemented a new international student career advisor. We have a new transition role for working with our industry partners in the local region to help them identify opportunities for international students and help them understand the transition opportunities. And we've just expanded our service for 3 years post-graduation for all international students to receive permanent residency advising. So that service would be $10,000 to a student post-graduation on their own. And so we've now expanded that service to keep our students within Canada that have that interest. And for those that are going to choose to go home, they'll have the opportunity to work in Canada for some time, for up to 3 years after graduation, build those relationships ideally with our region, but For those that want to stay, 85% of them want to stay in BC. And so we really want to stay, keep them connected. A few other things, we're making significant investment in experiential education opportunities for students. You'll hear more about the Experiential Education Hub this fall. But one example of that is investing nearly $10 million in student employment opportunities across the campus. And that's from our graduate student TA-ships, our work with RAs, and everything across the campus. And so really capturing that and helping students understand how to navigate and engage in experiential education opportunities. But then maybe I'll toss it to Rahan to talk a little bit about some of the bursary exploration that's happening in transfer articulation agreements and things like that. Rahan?
Thank you very much, Dale. I think you already gave a quite much detail there, but I just want to add that in 2009, when I came here 15 years back, we heard the similar, comparisons at various social networks and student forum, sharing their experiences. And at that time, we have close to 4,000 to 5,000 students on our campus. Now we have 12,000 strong students on our campus. We have 25,000 alumni. I think the wind is going to change. It's a slow process, and this always be compared. We will always be compared with UBC. But see the positive side of things, that all of our program, I don't see any single program which hasn't grown over time. The quality of students have improved. This is our collective responsibility. This is not only a top leadership responsibility or the dean's responsibility to be ambassador for the campus. So as far as the students coming, the retention is one aspect, which is Dale just mentioned, that we are trying to add services, providing students better advising, creating more opportunities for experiential learning. There are lots of ways which we can make sure the students have really good experience. They come here and they see something different. The other thing which I really, using this platform, encourage all the deans and faculties, also think about unique programming for attraction. We can't just be a subset of UBCV. And this has been my position always, that we have to provide students a different opportunity, different types of programming, or different types of experience. So it has to be combined in that way. As far as international students concerned, numbers, I think question been asked before, in terms of the numbers going down, we are considering various other possibilities, how we can make sure that we can attract students. So these are strategies, long-term strategies, short-term strategies, making sure that we attract student, retain student. And reality is the way the UBC admission system works. We get some first choice students, some second choice students. Some students pick campus, some students pick programs. So there are various ways which we have to address this thing. So it's not a straightforward data. So my message here is that we have to collectively work on it, and we are all ambassadors in terms of promoting our campus and making sure that students have a right experience.
Great. That's a very fulsome answer from our panel. So thank you for that. Looking at the Q&A, I'm actually just going to jump down a little bit to a question from Jesse, because I think it's a fabulous one. Can UBC IT Vancouver staff volunteer for move-in? I just happen to be in town and would love to contribute. Of course, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. So the link that we posted earlier in the chat, it was broken for about 5 minutes, but we fixed that. So you can register on that link. And actually, Shannon, can I throw this to you? And maybe you can talk a little bit about Move-In Day and what it's like to volunteer, because it's really fun. I've been there almost every year. So do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Sure, I'd be glad to, Nathan. Move-In Day is my favorite day of the year, and it actually really is. It's such a positive experience. Families and students are here. They're they have an understandable mix of excitement and nervousness, and there's a real pleasure in being here to help with that transition, to help answer questions, to help make people feel comfortable. It's a tremendously positive day. And it will be a very full day this year, but you don't require a commitment of the full day. If somebody's able to divide a few hours to both help direct vehicles or to help just be an ambassador and answer questions for students and your family, they're thrilled to be here, and in the services that we can provide. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks, Shannon. So Jesse, yes, definitely click on that link, volunteer. We'll be happy to have you. And Shannon, since I have you anyway, there was a question a little bit further down about the daycare expansion in the new building. This question is very timely for me because today is the last day of daycare for my daughter. She goes to kindergarten next week. But it sounds like daycare services are going to get even better in the coming years. Can you speak to that?
So we've had in the works for big one and the design works for an additional childcare building. We currently serve just a little over 50 students or 50 children presently on campus. And the new building will serve another 37. We went out to tender for that building late spring, early summer, and tenders came in very high. So it's a small standalone structure. That's not uncommon, but it wasn't unique to UBC. This is just the nature of what's happening for construction inflation across the province. So we had to just put it on a bit of a brief hold while we sought out additional funding opportunities. And pleased to say, the province came back to the table with additional funds to help support that. And so that project is back up and running. And we'll have a timeline for completion in probably about in about 3 to 4 weeks. We'll have a timeline for that completion. But my best guess right now is by December next fall.
Great, thank you, Shannon. So this is an anonymous question about library space and services in the downtown, for the downtown building. Rayhan, is it best to go for you for what kind of library services will be downtown?
I think at this point, we already have a working relationship with Public Library in downtown, and we have an ongoing discussion to make sure that those services will be available from the public library in downtown.
Nathan, I can also kind of weigh in. We've been working actively with Dale and trying to figure out, what spaces will be available in the academic portion of the building. The residential portion of the building has an amenities floor on the 11th floor. So if you're a student that's in the building and living in the building, there'll be some common space for you there. But also just trying to recognize that if we have students down there, whether you're a part of the nursing program in the downtown building, or if you happen to be a student who's living there and commuting onto campus, we want to make sure that UBC academic space is also available for you at different times. We're still working with Properties Trust on how we can keep the building safe and secure, but trying to find ways for students to be able to engage, get together, do project work, have a place to go if they want to get out of their apartment when they're studying for exams. So certainly kind of informal learning spaces and things like that, we'll certainly try to make the most of that on the downtown campus as well. But in terms of what a library actually means, we'll certainly be working with the folks in library services on our campus too, knowing that we can't put all the books obviously down there, but a lot of the things in terms of how it means to interact with the library are different today than they have in the past. And we'll certainly take, do our best to try and make sure that that's kind of available.
Perfect, thank you. So this is a question from Taylor, and he says we can feel free to skip, but we're not going to, Taylor. We're going to ask this question. So he says that there's been, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because it's kind of long, but there have been rumblings with the federal government that they want to put a cap on international students to ease pressure on housing. That's of course their words, not Taylor's. And the question is, has UBC engaged on any discussions at the political level, at the provincial or federal, about this policy and what it means? So, Lesley, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really important and very timely question. And indeed, one that has been exercising the executive this summer at UBC, that both the U15 and Universities Canada have been already starting the lobbying and conversation with the government about this. I think the most important thing to understand is that the majority of international students are not going to public institutions. And so there's a real difference between the private career colleges and the public universities and colleges. And in fact, the real pinch point is probably Ontario colleges, which have expanded their international students incredibly over the last decade. We're looking at the question of preferred locations, and that especially U15 universities would be those preferred locations. It's a for the federal government, I think they're trying to find that one thing that will solve a problem, and there will not be that one thing. I actually think it's probably not going to come to anything, but we are working quite actively in the political space to try and ensure that UBC will not be injured by any decisions they make.
Thanks, Lesley. So next question.
Sorry, Nathan, can I add testing a little bit?
Yeah.
On the same note, I remember attending one of the RUCBC provost meeting. There was some discussion around this, and there at the government level, there is a little bit more concerned about many of the private institutions who are bringing international students as well. So it is not necessarily be the university like UBC might be impacted if those decisions are made. It's very early to say, but that's what I understand.
Great, thank you. So there's an anonymous question. I have to say I was sorting the questions by most recent rather than most upvote. So people were probably like, why is he jumping around all over the place? So sorry about that, because there's a question that is rocketed right to the top. To be honest, I'm not totally sure who I should ask this question of, but this is around the central booking office system. It has been a struggle, and now we have to use Outlook to book the space to book spaces on campus. It's much more decentralized than it was before. So is there something being put in place to improve booking on campus? And what does that look like? So I'm not sure who wants to take this one on. I can
Nathan,
speak.
I can start. Yeah,
I
can
start. Martin?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So that is a great question. So I will say that the university relations team has volunteered to take this on. As some of you might be aware, enrollment services has made the decision that it's in the best interest of the organization of our campus to not administer space that is not considered academic in nature. So that includes boardrooms in certain areas, that includes the ballroom, which is UNC, that includes the atriums and EME and a bunch of other spaces, including outdoor spaces. And so given that challenge, we've looked at it and said, well, what can we do to help? And I will tell you that it is going to be a pretty painful process for the next little while as we sort through this, but we are all collectively working together to try to figure out a solution. It's 2023. Has to be with the age of artificial intelligence that we live in, there has to be a really easy solution for this. And so we're exploring those kind of options. But if I can just ask you for your patience with us as we go through this process, because right now we have quite a fair bit of responsibilities, of course. And so we will get to it, but it might just be a painful process in the next couple of months. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to it, but I'm happy to take one for the team.
Yeah, no, not at all, Martin. I'll weigh in too, because space is kind of this collective issue, and I know a lot of people can be a little bit frustrated. It's just booking a room, but where we really find the challenge is that when we have events on campus, often it's not just one space. In lots of situations, even small to medium sized things, if somebody wants a place to have some food, they want to have a room to be able to have their meeting, but they also might want breakout rooms and things like that. So it is one of these things that on a small campus, we try and utilize our spaces for multiple purposes. We don't have kind of a conference center area where we can just second off the rooms and have events in it. So we are working hard. This is not a new issue to us, but we are trying to find a way that makes it easier for people to be able to have events and to be able to do it professionally. So this is a bit of a stage where the CBO is in a unit that is under a great deal of pressure with a lot of the changes that are happening to Workday and the implementation of new systems and everything that kind of impacts that group. So we're trying to be sensitive to the fact that's the highest order priority, but Martin and myself and a few others are keenly committed to try and make sure that we find a better way to do this and to be able to support campus so that everybody doesn't have to make this up on their own.
Thank you to both of you for that. So there was a comment that the campus operations, such as security, facilities management, they were on campus during the emergency. They were also the same group that were here during COVID, while everyone else was told to stay away. So it's largely the same people that are here when the rest of us are not. And the question is, will UBC do anything to show their appreciation to these individuals? I know, Lesley, you explicitly thanked them, but do you want to add anything on top of that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question that we of course do have collective agreements, and so we want to make sure that we are supporting our staff and in terms of how those collective agreements work as well. I think that we do need to give them a round of thanks for this, and we can look into what are the options of things we can do. One of the things I think we will find is that they've worked a great deal of overtime, and so that's something we need to look into as well. I don't know, Alex, whether you have things that you would say.
Thanks, Lesley. So I appreciate this question. Thank you. I saw it bubble up the other day as well when we met with some leaders. And during that session, one of the things was about recognition and how we can recognize one another and come together to appreciate the work that is collectively done. I do think this is a tricky one because sometimes the work that is being done while people aren't on campus is significant as well. And while I can appreciate we all have different roles to play, there is a collective community that has been working hard, both physically present and virtually, to make sure that we were able to meet our objectives and our responsibilities through COVID to meet the needs of students. So it is a little bit tricky to tease apart or to recognize based on where people physically were. At the same time, I acknowledge those people that were physically here were coming to work when others were able to work out of their homes. So I'm happy to work with Rob and Shelley in terms of looking at their team's needs. And I do want to express my appreciation for people who have worked regardless where they have been virtually or physically, in terms of the extra effort that I know people collectively put in to making this a great place for people to study and do their research. So I appreciate that contribution.
Great, thank you. There's a question at the top here about ASL interpretation, so we're going to try and get that sorted for you right now. So what can we do to ensure that those that need to be here every day are provided quiet, comfortable, and appropriate spaces to work? It appears that many offices, faculty or otherwise, are consistently empty, while others have to cram into small, cramped, shared spaces. So really, this is a question about space on campus. Rob, do you want to maybe take this one?
Yeah, I can take it and also leave it to Rahan because there is, some questions about faculty offices and graduate students. So, to say that it's been a changing environment over the last couple of years, that's very true. And we noticed this on the Vancouver campus, and I was at a meeting with Western Canadian finance folks, not that long ago, and it is a question that's percolating on a lot of different campuses, which is, with hybrid remote being kind of the new reality that's taking place, how do we try and make sure that we have appropriate spaces on campus that are available for those who need to be here, but also the flexibility that I think is now kind of being demanded by people who want to work at complicated organizations. It's even more of a pressure in Vancouver because a lot of those folks are sitting in 1 to 3 hour commutes to get back and forth to campus. So we have been working as a space committee, but also within our principals exec group to try and figure out what can be the expectations. At what point can you put your plant and your picture of your loved ones on your desk and leave them there versus times where you're going to have to share. So we've been slowly, as we've been encountering requests that are coming and the odd new personnel that are joining our teams, to look at for lack of a better word, intensifying the use of space, but really trying to drive our groups. And I've been pushing my groups, and some of them have felt this pain already, which is being able to share, having to accommodate different days than they may have otherwise wanted to be on campus for sharing purposes and the more intense use of space for the people who aren't here 5 days a week, or at least 4 days a week. So we're trying to slowly and gently figure out how to better utilize the spaces that we have in our offices and in our workstation areas, utilizing some meeting rooms as overflow for those days when the entire unit needs to be on campus. So we are trying to address that, but it is a bit of a slow process because it's a culture change. People are used to being able to have their spaces. We want to try and make things as universal as possible. So having people have laptops, being able to plug into whatever desk they sit down in an area, these are all strategies that we're slowly starting to work towards. But we're not there yet. There's no question that part of this is going to be able to change the culture, change the expectations, but work with every unit because every unit is somewhat unique. So from the administrative side, those are the things that we're looking to pursue. And then on the academic side, I'll pass it over to Rehan.
Thanks, Rob. I think in the last few years, we have added significant space for our graduate students. IP1, IA1 is an example where at least 100+ graduate students has been accommodated. These are new added places, but still, we can't say that we have, all the space available for all the graduate students, but I think we can be managed properly. As far as the faculty offices are concerned, they come under faculty umbrella, and they are the deans are making those decisions. I think it's our collective decision. I think this is something very important. We are, as a community, see that we have challenges. Thus, it's not a responsibility lies with the senior administration to telling people, if you are not using your space, please share your space. This is something which I really would like to request to all of you. If spaces are not being used, and I think has to be discussed, and the deans has to make those decisions and choices that how we can use those spaces. If the rooms are empty, and I know for sure that has been my experience in my previous role, that sometimes we asking for more spaces, but even the existing spaces are not properly utilized. So these are the discussion has to happen in the faculties, not by the central unit. So telling, okay, can we put some special fob and checking fobs of the people whether they're coming to. This is not our job. What I really like to see, creating that kind of a culture where we are really responsible in a way, because we are the ones who are asking for more space, and our existing spaces hasn't been utilized. So my request is this health discussion for an academic side of things has to be discussed in your faculty.
Great, thank you. So next question is around ability of UBC employees to take courses, which is obviously an enormous benefit and one of the reasons that it's great to work for a university. But the process of applying to take courses is a roller coaster of troubles. So this person is just flagging this. They've worked with enrollment services and our benefits contact, and has been tossed back and forth. It would be great if we could have a better set of instructions or help for employees that are looking to further their professional development through UBC courses. So maybe Rehan and Alex, if you don't mind tackling this together.
Yeah, so I don't have an answer for this question. I definitely promise that I will look into it, that what are the challenges. I have to talk to the enrollment services about that, but it should not happen. I think should be if employees are eligible, they should be having an easier way of taking those courses. So I pass on to Alex if there's any specific thing you want to talk, but we definitely provide more information later on.
Yeah, sure. So I echo Rehan's commitment to look into it. And if this individual wants to reach out to me directly, it'd be great to understand their experience, their personal experience through the system. There was a tuition waiver initiative as part of Workday Release 1 with HR and Finance. So I'd love to better understand the roller coaster ride that this individual's been experiencing, and maybe we're able to really tackle some of the troubling pieces within that. So yeah, thank you for flagging it.
Thank you. So Alex, I'm going to throw the next one to you as well, if that's okay. So this is around question or any plans for financial supports for housing for staff that are paying rent. This person says their job classification doesn't pay very highly, and the rental costs here in the Okanagan are putting a significant strain. And of course, inflation is not helping either. They've reached out to Vancouver, but they said there's nothing available here in the Okanagan, despite having similar high rental rates. Are you able to speak to that, Alex?
Sure. Probably in the way that unfortunately most people are speaking to the housing issue in the country right now, which is not very well. I can't speak to it particularly well. I think what I want to be able to say is that we're hyper aware of the housing challenge in the Valley. It was both for renters and for those that want to purchase. We were increasingly challenged this year when the federal government put in restrictions around foreign home ownership. So that also impacted many of our faculty and staff. So currently, they're correct. There is no program for supporting renters or buyers on the Okanagan campus or in the Okanagan area. Rob and I worked together to do a little bit of costing and modeling on a program, but we have had, as Rob's mentioned, around some of there's competing priorities financially on this campus, and so we have not been in a position to move forward with any type of assistance program. I will also say the difference between Vancouver campus and the Okanagan campus is that Vancouver has housing stock. So it's a much older campus, it's a much bigger campus. There are actually rentals on campus for faculty and staff. And so that also contributes to the difference in terms of what we're able to offer here compared to Vancouver. Rob, I don't know if you want to say more on the housing file.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And it's not something. There's another question. Obviously, this impacts staff as well as it does faculty, and we appreciate that. We're recruiting folks, and we're finding that same challenge is, and that's just of the people that we know that apply. We know that there's lots of people that don't even apply because if you're coming from a lower rent market or a lower housing market, it's just prohibitive to come to Kelowna. It is something that we're addressing, but it primarily is a financial question. Some of the programs for faculty members that have been in Vancouver for quite some time due to their housing market. Some of them are significantly merit-based, and so and some of them are available to all faculty members. And it was interesting for us to work with our Vancouver colleagues on how they actually administer those programs. And to be honest, there's a little bit of myth and legend out there. So one of the things that I've been working with Rehan and our executive group on is what's the best and suitable program to run here. Do we want this to be something that's very selective, very merit-based? Do we want something that allows all of our faculties to participate and to be able to make things a little bit easier to hire the faculty members that they want to, especially if we are getting maybe folks who are a little bit earlier in their careers. Those are folks that are often still buried in student debt and they haven't had 2 or 3 houses along their careers. So it's an active project for us, but there is a financial cost to this. And so right now, one of the big challenges that we have with the resources that are available is how can we offer a meaningful program, offering people a very small token amount that really doesn't make a difference for them being able to find housing. We feel, wouldn't necessarily be in the best interest of the employee or the university. So it hasn't been shelved from the standpoint that we don't know that it continues to be an issue. It absolutely continues to be an issue. And we're just trying to find a financial way to be able to do this. Because once you start it, you're in it for the long haul. And we need to make sure that we can continue to be able to offer it in an appropriate way.
Okay, thank you. So continuing along the housing theme, we've talked about staff, we've talked about faculty, and of course, students are a concern as well. So given housing availability and high rents, which of course we've already talked about, what is UBC doing to support students on the housing front? Obviously, building more housing like UBCO downtown is part of that, but that's sort of longer term. Dale, do you want to speak to some of the supports for students, like places for students, for example?
Yeah, let me offer up 3 things. One, I want to thank the development team. They've done quite a lot of work here to help raise funds for the Student Affordability Fund. We do survey students annually on their greatest affordability issues, housing being number 1. There's also food, tuition costs, but also transportation costs are quite challenging here, because as students have to look to housing in greater regions, as there's also low vacancy rates, we understand that transportation is also a barrier. So to have a fund available to students to address that barrier in terms of affordability, want to highlight that is available to them. In our enrollment services team, we're using one funnel essentially for all students to apply based on need for affordability related issues. A quick shout out for the SUO, who has just put forward $25,000, which the university will be matching, to recognize the need around transportation affordability support for those that have to rent from further away locations. The second thing to highlight is Places for Students. We do partner with Places for Students for landlords to host for free to students, but also for faculty and staff for rental accommodations across the Okanagan. Currently, there are over 125 long-term rentals posted, but also 14 short-term rentals for those that are in an evacuee situation right now. That number has moved up and down over the last number of days as students have taken advantage of that, but also we've done an appeal into the community and we've been promoting that. So I want to acknowledge the community also for stepping up and offering supports to our students. So please do direct students to Places for Students. And then lastly, Shannon and Rob have been doing an incredible amount of work around developing a further housing plan for students, which will see the addition of over 500 beds in the partnership with Properties Trust in downtown UBCO downtown, but also additional residence beds in the expansion of residences here on campus. So I think a bit of a multi-pronged approach where addressing the affordability issue currently through Affordability Fund, offering as many opportunities in the community as possible, but also expanding our on-campus complement and downtown complement.
Thanks, Dale. So I'm actually going to ask a question that isn't in the Q&A box, but I'm suddenly conscious that we insisted that Shelley be here, and she's been sitting quietly in the virtual corner of the room. And I do want to ask a question, and this is one that I keep getting just from people around the office, and that's around air quality in our buildings. I know Shelley her team has been constantly monitoring air quality, and there is a smell of smoke in certain buildings. But Shelley, can you speak to, is it safe to come to campus?
This one I thought I was going to get through without a question, Nathan. So yeah, I mean, clearly we don't live in a bubble. We live in the Okanagan. And so I think we're all aware that our outdoor air quality has fluctuated from good to very poor due to wildfire smoke. And of course, outdoor air quality is a really good influencer of indoor air quality. So I think all of us have kind of become, I'm guessing all of us have become familiar with the Air Quality Health Index, just in terms of the associated guidelines that come with that. And that really is the most appropriate public health tool that we are using to inform decisions around what we should and should not be doing. So during periods of wildfire smoke, one of the things that we monitor very closely is a particulate size of 2.5, so PM 2.5. That's the one that has the greatest health impact. I know that larger particles can cause irritation, but usually we end up coughing or sneezing those out. So I think one other thing I'd like us to remember is that the smoky smell is not necessarily an indicator of those particulates, those 2.5 particulates. So to Nathan's question, what have we done? I would say the day after the evacuation order was lifted, we started air quality testing. Facilities was right on doing filter changes. During COVID, one of the decisions we made to ensure that our campus buildings were more resilient in light of anticipated wildfires in the future is we improved our building filtration systems. And so what that means, without getting into the details, is that 95% of the air filters on campus are rated to capture, or greater than 95% of campus air filters are rated to capture large amounts, the majority of that PM 2.5. The testing we've done is not just PM 2.5, we've also looked at VOCs. So that is, the smell that you get as well. I have an air quality report sitting on my desks that show that the buildings are performing incredibly well. There was some tricky troubleshooting at the beginning, and we really relied on the community to kind of reach out to us and let us know what their experience was as well. So we were able to add extra interventions such as air scrubbers within buildings like CCS and ARCS. And so we will continue to monitor this. We do ask that if you are concerned, of course, continue to monitor the index. But if you are concerned, reach out to your supervisor, reach out to health and safety, reach out to your joint health and safety committee. But we are taking this very seriously, and we will continue to monitor the air as long as the outdoor air is fluctuating.
Thanks, Shelley. That's I think that makes us all feel better. So next question is around the Workday's replacement for Degree Navigator. This person saying it's not very intuitive and doesn't operate very well for some degrees. Is there any talk of finding an alternate degree progression tool? Dale, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks to the anonymous attendee that's raised the question. This has been brought up as a key issue from the ITLs, particularly those that are in advising units. And so just want to reference that this is highly on the agenda in terms of one of the things that we're looking for. One of the things that we're waiting on is the final change bundles that impact this tool. So we do anticipate that there will be gaps. This is not the exact same tool that we've been using in the past. The current tool that we're using also has gaps with some of our degree programs. We've just learned how to adapt around it. We're trying to understand with the new change bundles if we'll be able to do that. What we understand is that we'll also be able to use the existing Degree Navigator for some time for staff and faculty in the background to help while we work through the transition and look at if we need a third-party solution to help us fill the gap. Or we also understand that Workday is continuing to improve and release new product throughout. And so we're waiting to see what those changes will be, particularly in this area around the Degree Navigator and academic progression tool.
Thanks, Dale. So we just have about 3 minutes left. We'll see how many questions we can get through in those 3 minutes. The next question, I feel like it has been answered. This is, it says, last town hall, we saw from the questions and answers online that housing support for faculty has been shelved, given that UBC Vancouver has programs in place. Given how bad the situation is in the Okanagan, is it really not a priority for leadership? I know that Rob touched on this, but Lesley and Rayhan, do you want to add anything? I feel like we've answered, but keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a priority conceptually. The challenge we do have is that the budget is very tight, as Rob was saying. And so in the programs that are in Vancouver rely on deeper pockets of faculties, for example, and on some endowment money that we don't have access to. And so we will need to do it from our operating budget. And the last couple of years have been challenging for us in terms of our operating budget. And so it just cannot rise to the top at the moment. But we are definitely, we've talked about it a lot. We've thought about what are the options, but we need to find a way that we can find resources to do it.
Great, thank you. So this is another question around booking spaces in Outlook. This is really more of a technical question about separating Vancouver spaces from Okanagan spaces. I know that IT is working on this as we kind of transition to using Outlook. So I can say that is something that needs to be looked into, and I know IT is doing lots of work on that front. Okay, let's see how much time we have. We have 1 minute left, so I'm going to try and throw one last question in there. So last year, many students came to take their courses in person, only to find out it was switched online. And the question is there any oversight at the leadership level of how these decisions are made? Rayhan, do you want to take that one? A tough one, right at the very end.
Yeah, so the provost office or enrollment service just make sure what is coming from the faculties. But just to remind that it might have happened because sometimes we don't have a instructor at the last moment and that's changed, and then there's not enough time for the communication. But generally these type of communications come from the faculty as well. So we'll definitely look into it. There might be some challenges like that, but we basically work with faculties and based on their recommendations, we promote it, whether it's an online, hybrid, or a in-person course.
Right, thanks. So here we are, 10:30 on the nose. There are still some questions in the Q&A. We will answer those and put them in a future edition of the exchange. So I'm sorry we can get to all of them, but I do want to give last word to Lesley this morning.
Thanks, Nathan. I won't keep us more than 30 seconds, but I want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you for coming. Thank you for thinking forward rather than back. I was so impressed that the questions are all about where are we going, as opposed to what happened in the last week and a half. And I think that's appropriate because I think that we've got such important work to do in the year and the years to come. I also really want to thank the panelists that you see on the screen, and of course their teams behind them that have been working both these last 10 days, but in time before that, and getting us ready and getting us moving towards a great goal in the future. So thanks to everyone for that, and have a great year. It's going to be very good. So thank you very much.
Thanks, and that closes us out. Thank you, everyone.